Chords and Coffee, and we are doing 1564, this time in the key of F. Ugh. Most time, guitar players, when you think about the key of F, you're like, hey, what else you got? I don't want to play in the key of F. Why? I don't know, because it's a beautiful key, and there's some really, really cool voicings, and I'm going to show you here in just a second, that are not bar chords that you can make on the guitar that sound extraordinary in the key of F. So we'll get to those, but speaking of bar chords, F is kind of like the first bar chord that everybody learns. At least that's how it was for me. And so if you haven't learned that, I'm honored to show that to you right now. So let's just get right into it. So index finger is going to bar or cover the high E and the B on the first fret. So the high E string and the B string on the first fret with just your one little finger right there. And if you're making this and you're like, I can't do it, spend a little bit of time just making that bar. Just that. Why? I mean, what's the return on investment, Nate? Johnny be good? Or a ton of other little things where you have to cover up two strings with one finger. Trust me, friend, it comes in super handy. So spend a little time doing that, and then once you got that, then take your middle finger and put that on the second fret of the G, and then that ring finger on the third fret of the D. And there you have it. Now, if you look at my hand, my thumb is kind of just creeping over. You don't have to do that, but if you find that just the natural grip of your hand as you're making this chord does that, I wouldn't fight that. Just let it be what it is. It's fine. So then we're doing a 1564 in the key of F. So the 5 chord is going to be a C. And good old cowboy C, if you hadn't played that one yet, it's going to be index finger on the first fret of the B, an open G string. You're going to have your middle finger on the second fret of the D, and then your ring finger is going to be on the third fret of the A. C major, love it. Now, D minor. So, a couple schools of thought here on this. The first one is index finger is going to be on the first fret of the high E, ring finger is going to be on the third fret of the B, and the middle finger is going to be on the second fret of the G string with an open D. For whatever reason, and I don't know, and I don't even know if it's right, but it feels good to me and I do it all the time. A lot of times my pinky will go on the third fret of that B string. And that leaves your your ring finger open to do some little activities, stuff like that, whatever. If you find that your pinky wants to be there too, I think that's okay. Now B flat. Speaking of ring fingers and pinkies, index finger is going to be on the first fret of the A, all the way across, human capo to high E. Ring finger or pinky, whichever one is more comfortable to you. If you can do both, if you say, well, Nate, tell me which one to do, I would say probably do ring. And that's going to go over the third fret of the D, the G, and the B. Don't stress about that high E string, as long as you get that. That's good, okay? So that's the first 1564 in the key of F. Now let's get to some of the cool stuff here. Not that that wasn't cool, but some of the stuff that's a little bit different. So this first chord, this is going to be F add 9. This is going to be index finger on the first fret of the B, middle finger on the second fret of the G, ring finger is going to be on the third fret of the D, pinky is going to be on the high E string. Why is it an add 9? Because we're adding the G in an F major scale, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. Those were not the right pitches, but those were the right notes. When you play that scale, the second, if it's an octave above the roots, it's a 9, right? And the reason that is because it sounds a little different. It has a little bit different function. Kind of tucks in there a little bit nicer. Doesn't really change a whole lot, but it makes it sound a little brighter to me. So then, after this F add 9, let's just leave our pinky right where he's at on the third fret of the high E. Okay, and then let's just build a C chord. And that C is going to be index finger on the B string, first fret. Middle is going to be on the second fret of the D, and then ring is going to be on the third fret of the A. Pinky is going to be on the high E. Now, doesn't that change that C? Actually, it doesn't. We're just doing 2 Gs now. We had a G before in this open string, and now we have this octave. It's still just a C chord. But because we have that common note between those two chords, it sounds nice, and it gives it just a slightly different flavor. So, just keeping that same idea, let's do a little of this D minor, but just put a little sus4 in there, right? And so basically you're going to build this D minor chord again, index finger on the first fret of the high E, ring finger on the third fret of the B, middle finger on the second fret of the G, but then just put your pinky down on the third fret of the high E. And probably take it off because that little suspension will sound nice for a moment, and the release will sound really good, especially once we get to this B flat sus2. This is an easier way to make that same chord we just made a second ago. You're going to have your index finger on the first fret of the A string all the way across to the high E. You're going to have your ring finger on the third fret of the D, pinky's third fret of the G, and then let the index finger catch that first fret of the B. And if you can get the high E too with the index finger, your human capo, great, because it'll sound like this. So that whole thing is... It's almost like there's a little tiny melody in there just kind of moving the chords along and creating just a little bit of a point of interest. So in keeping with that same idea down here, let's take a finger off and make an F major 7. Now you want to be careful because sometimes some songs, like they don't want the one chord to be a major 7, right? Especially, you know, if you're playing something that's a little, well, it doesn't have that kind of flowing, kind of atmospheric, kind of lilting, beautiful major 7 feel to it. It may need the stoicism of just a regular major chord, right? So be careful with this one. But if you do find yourself in a situation where that applies, this is handy dandy. This is going to be F major 7, but let's put it over C just to add a little harmonic interest on the bottom of the chord. And so what we're going to do is index finger is going to be on the first fret of the B. The high E is going to be open. Middle finger is going to be on the second fret of the G. And then let's put our pinky down on the third fret of the D. And then your ring finger is going to go on the third fret of the A, playing that C note. And while we're at it, let's go to a C over G. So we're kind of creating a little bit different bass line here. It's going to be that same C chord with first finger on the B string, index finger on the first fret of the B string, open G. Middle is going to be on the second fret of the D. And then pinky is going to be on the third fret of the A with your ring finger now on the third fret of the low E. So that sounds like this. Real quick, I feel like somebody's going to say, well, does that mean my bass player has to play the bass notes C over that F chord and G over that C chord? Not necessarily. If the bass player is playing down low enough, it'll actually sound nice. It'll sound really rich. But if you do want to try that, kind of spice that up a little bit, you ought to try that, especially if you're, you know, like you're playing on a Sunday morning or something and you're playing that progression a whole bunch of times and you just need a little bit different point of interest or feel like there's some movement towards resolution. Try that, see what happens. So after that C over G, let's do a D minor 9. And we're going to do it right here just to kind of break out of this first position here. We're going to go middle finger on the A string, 5th fret. Index finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the D. And then ring is going to be on the 5th fret of the G. Pinky is going to be on the 5th fret of the B. Open E. So that, and once more. And if you've noticed, all of these chords have this open E ringing the whole time, which is nice. Right, and then for this, we're going to go up to this B flat major 7. And so this E has been going da, 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 which is nice. What do I mean? Well, that E note has been ringing in every single one of those, right? And then now, little resolution towards that B flat major 7. How do I make that? Well, that's going to be index finger on the 6th fret of the low E, skipping the A. Ring finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the D. Pinky is going to be on the 7th fret of the G. Middle finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the B. And that's on that F note there. That's all. It's kind of cool, right? All right, let's do another one. So this one, You know, as we were doing that high E open like that, I thought of another one. I'm going to give it to you after this one because I don't want to scare you away, because this one that's coming up has a little bit more hand movement here. But before we do that, I want to show you this voicing. I use this all the time. It's probably like one of my favorite secret chord things to do over F. And it's this F. It's really a sus2 because you've got an F, a C, a G, and a G, right? And it's just a beautiful chord grip. And here's the way I make it. I make it with my index finger on the 8th fret of the A. Pinky's going to be on the 10th fret of the D, an open G. And then your middle finger is going to be on the 8th fret of the B. Now, if you hit that high E, not the end of the world. I don't hate it, but not totally applicable in most situations. And this chord, just how it's voiced and where it sits on a guitar, you'd be surprised how many times you can kind of slide this in and it sounds great. Okay, so we're going to do our F like that. And then here's what's awesome is we're just going to make our C like this. So your index finger is just the only thing that moves, and that comes over here to the 8th fret of the low E. So you're skipping the A, your pinky stays on the 10th fret of the D, open G, middle stays on the 8th fret of the B. And then you're going to go to this D minor 11, and that's going to be, from here, our middle finger is going to go to the 10th fret of the low E, ring finger is going to hit the 10th fret of the D, pinky is going to hit the 10th fret of the G, and then index finger is going to hit the 8th fret of the B. And then after this, I feel like we just should go back to this B major 7 on this that we just did a second ago. B flat major 7, I should say. Okay, so that whole thing sounds like this. And a funny little thing is that if you end up hitting that high E on this D minor 11, and then you hit it again on the B flat major 7, it's almost like this D minor, if you make this like a D minor 9 with the 11, it almost gives like permission for this B flat major 7. The E would be a sharp 11 because that's a sharp 4, but it's an octave above. Right? That's really pretty. So speaking of that same kind of idea, here's the last one I'll show you, and this is really cool, and this is a good one to do, like, you know, it's in a broken down section, or maybe it's an intro, or it's a really soft outro. Index finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the D string. G is going to be held down by the ring finger on the 5th fret. Pinky is going to be on the 5th fret of the B. Open E. So this is like an F major 7. And then now take your index off and put it on the 3rd fret of the A, and that's going to basically be a C chord. Just skip the A, or excuse me, skip the D, and then after that, we're just going to go back to that D minor 9 that we made just a second ago. Remember that? And then for the B flat, let's go. It's a pretty little thing, right? So after this F major 7 to the C chord, to this D minor 9, we've got all those E's ringing. We're basically going to do this C over B flat. It's a beautiful treatment to do on the 4 chord where you have like, basically your index finger is going to be on the 5th fret of the D, the G, and the B. And then your middle finger is going to hold down the 6th fret of the low E. So this is very Lydian. This is like the 4 chord sound where you have the major scale over the 4 chord and you're getting all these extensions, right? But then you're releasing it to the regular triad. And how that works is your index finger and your middle are here. So middle is on the 6th frets of the low E, and then shift it to where your index goes back to the 3rd fret of the D, the G, and the B, and your pinky hits that 6th fret of the low E. I love that. And also, in all of this, when you get to that D minor chord, if you need a different variation, especially if you're like, give me something other than this, and this, and this. One of my favorite ways to make D minor is this. And this is just 2 fingers, and this is going to be middle finger on the 6th fret of the B, ring finger on the 7th fret of the G with an open D string and open high E. It's a D minor 9. What's nice about that is that you can just take your index finger that's just kind of hanging out right now and put him on the 6th fret of the low E. And make that B flat, kind of this, ends up being kind of a B flat with an added sharp 11 on it, which is that E natural. F is a great key. F is an awesome key for guitar. And you don't have to use a capo. There's nothing wrong with using a capo, but you don't have to use a capo to play an F, right? So I hope this helps you approach this key with some new ideas. I hope you have questions, and I hope you put them in the comments. I hope you share the video, hit the subscribe button, but most of all, I hope you're living life the best you can with guitar in your hand. Thank you for the privilege of your time. We do this every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time. We'll see you next week for another Chords and Coffee.